Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast. My name's Rodney.
And my name is Zach.
How is your week going, Zachary?
Oh, it's just going terrifically well, you know. Maybe, actually not that great. We're about to move into lockdown, but I don't think life's going to change too much. We're recording this pre-election as well, so, you know, right now, pre-US election, not that either of us live in those countries, but, you know, that has ramifications for people we know and listeners of this show and all that kind of stuff. So I hope everybody's staying sane and safe and, you know, practicing good mental health, not doom scrolling. Don't doom scroll. It's an easy thing to get into, just consistently refreshing Twitter and the news and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to know right away. So instead, just do something you enjoy. That would be my advice. Listen to this show. That's hopefully something you enjoy if you're here. How are you, Rod?
Good. I was thinking that doom scroll is probably a good name for a podcast about, like, maybe bad news, but then you put a positive twist at the end of each story or something. But I'm sure there's already one called that. The election is happening. We're recording it before it happens. It'll probably be out as it's happening. So we can't tell you to go and vote, or it won't make any difference. But, you know, wishing the best for everybody. We might, I don't know what your schedule's like, but maybe next week if we do a episode of Shakedown, we'll make that our episode, our election recap episode. There's also an Apple event, so we'll get to our Apple predictions and we'll see who got them right. We'll also do all our special segments like Secret Sound and Battle of the Sextons, all the classics. We'll bring them all back.
Stuff you should know.
That's all what you tune in to Shakedown for.
Oh, I'm really excited about getting some Apple Silicon MacBook Air choices to make. So
what
excited.
A nerdy thing to say. I mean, if you didn't know anything about it, you would just imagine the computer was made of, like, rubber or something. It's made out of Apple Silicon, you know?
It's so flexy. It's funny, I got it and I immediately dropped it on the ground and I expected to bounce back up and it didn't. It's just smashed on the floor. What is this Apple Silicon?
What an inside baseball phrase. But anyway, we're here to talk about the Emilia Romagna GP, the classic. You don't just have fond memories of all of the historic Emilia Romagna Grand Prix from over the years and the decades, really. Regardless
Do you think San
of...
Marino's disappointed that the fact that the race track is not in the country of San Marino and it has to be in Italy, and that they just essentially have to borrow a track? That's what I found on looking at maps on Google Maps.
Okay.
I always thought that Imola was in San Marino, but it's not. It's weird.
I have no idea. I know, I've heard fifth hand even, that Racing Point had some trucks drive to Mugello to drop off stuff, and the driver was at the gate going, "I'm here, can you let me in?" And they're like, "Where are you?" He's like, "We're at the gate too, we can't see you." And he's like, "Yep, right here, the gate says Mugello." And they're like, wrong track. Luckily, they're all in the same country. This is one of those sort of unexpected benefits of having three races in the same country. But still, we had a race. It happened. We're going to talk all about it. We've got a fantasy league to have a look at. I've got a super quiz coming up later. So that's pretty much what this show is.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I'm not going to change the format on you last minute.
Would you do that?
That would be upsetting in these uncertain times.
We both need a little bit more agreement in our lives. That's just to pause for a second and say anything before we get into the race recap.
No, I think everything will kind of come up. Should we say that it's nice that now that all the seats are done, essentially, basically, except some Red Bull seats? So do you want to talk about that during the race recap? Were there any noteworthy things that you were like, oh?
Maybe we could just get them out of the way. Kimi Räikkönen and Antonio Giovinazzi re-signed at Alfa Romeo. You have to be careful saying resigned. Re-signed. After a bit of conjecture, George Russell re-signs for Williams, and Latifi confirmed. Pierre Gasly confirmed at AlphaTauri, and then a little bit of a hint from old mate Helmut Marko saying we needed to secure Pierre Gasly at that team because the very young and experienced driver that's going to be driving with him, and it's like, what? So
Helmut Marko has no chill. He doesn't know how to how to drive.
I have so many notes. Helmut, what the fuck? So obviously Kvyat's on the way out, and you'd have to imagine Albon won't be sliding from there if he leaves Red Bull, which, hey, he probably will at this stage. It's looking good for Perez to go there, hey.
Imagine... what that does is it frees up both Grosjean and Kvyat at the same time to be in a team as the double torpedoes. You know, they could be in a Formula E team, get them on a single wet. Could you imagine like a Le Mans 24 team of Grosjean, Kvyat? Who would be the third to make the you need three drivers for Le Mans 24 if you're going to pick another torpedo? Maybe
Kobayashi.
Pardon?
Kamui Kobayashi.
Oh, Kobayashi is a good one. I was going to say, maybe Esteban Tejero Gutierrez would be a nice fit for that team. Or Pasta Maldonado. Of course, it's Pasta Maldonado.
Yeah, well, he's more the flip. He's more the torpedo. Gutierrez is the torpedo-y. And then there's obviously Lewis Hamilton, who clearly is going to be leaving Mercedes at the end of the season, right? Because he doesn't have a contract. Who knows if we'll be here next year? What the fuck are you talking about? Of course you're going to be there. What a stupid thing. What a stupid thing. It really made me angry. There's so many articles being written. Maybe Hamilton really is leaving. It's like, guys, he's not. He's just not. This throwing you the dummy. This is the equivalent of him saying, my front tire is fucking gone. I need to pit right now. And then can you do 30 more laps? He's like, yeah, no worries. This is the equivalent of that. Him saying, I'm not going to be here next year. Exactly. He's like, give me more fucking money. That's what this is all about. Anyway.
What I want is more money and maybe a bit more free time as well.
Yeah, whatever.
So
exactly.
I can go and do the other things.
It's all
I like
leverage.
Doing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe he would angle for a contract that is like, look, I want to go do something else for like a year, but maybe not next year, but like the year after, and then come back, still have my seat. Like, could he take a sabbatical? But why would he? Like, if you're fit and healthy now, he's a man who lives in the moment. You just go win 6 more world championships, and then you'll still be young enough to go and launch a career in whatever you want to do.
I think that's the strongest indication that this is all bullshit, is that he's like, yeah, look, I don't know, maybe I won't be here next year. I mean, I still feel incredibly strong. I'm still driving in the best form that I've ever been, and any team would be stupid to let go of me. But I don't know, maybe I won't be around. It's like, dude, come on. It's not like he's going, man, I could barely get out of the car and I'm winning, yeah, but boy, it's a struggle. He's not saying anything like that. It's just, it makes me mad that people buy into the garbage.
Oh. Well, now that we've got all of that out of our systems,
good.
Is there anything else you could think of?
Can't think of anything other than this race. No. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let us race a bit. I gave him space. Suck my balls, man. Let's hurry up and get out of here. We've got a race to do.
Let them race is exactly what they did, Zach. There is a little bit to talk about, and it's your turn to give us a 30-second recap. So how are you feeling about this one?
Feeling all right. I'm feeling good, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You reckon you can get it all done within the timer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pressure's on. Me.
Nothing says confidence like
to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Zach, you're going to be at Mercedes next year? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep-a-reno. All right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here you go.
Points aren't given on Saturday, Rod, nor to Bottas, nor to the how good the race will be at Imola this week when it wasn't that good. And immediately Bottas was like, yeah, I'm just going to totally win this race. I'm really good and stuff. But it didn't turn out that way, with Hamilton getting an opportunity for a virtual safety car because Ocon's car broke. So he managed to get basically a free pit stop when Bottas didn't. And Mercedes were like, yeah, cool. Let's just make sure we finish 1-2. What that meant was that Ricciardo could also finish on the podium. We got the double shoey, and Magnussen had to retire because he had a really bad headache.
Yeah, he did. That's all the things. I think there's a big story here around the Mercedes drivers and what happens. So we can get into that maybe to start off, because
yeah.
Bottas was fast in practice, took pole, and in a surprising move, Hamilton was like, yeah, I didn't get pole today because I just wasn't good. Just wasn't good today. He had another one of those races that he sometimes has. Doesn't say, sometimes he'll say, oh, look, I know exactly what I did wrong. It was right there. And I could just, if I could go back and do that one corner again, I would do it differently. This time he was just like, no, it's just slow. So Bottas makes a really good start. Hamilton, not a good start. He's running third. Then there's a scrap on the first lap, and then Bottas comes around, and because he's taken pole and made such a great start, picks up this, basically half of a car is attached now to his car. It's incredible if you've seen the bit that they pull off. So freaking big. It's amazing he can even drive. The team said that it cost him something like 0.7 seconds a lap, which, I mean, if that's true, it explains a lot, because he was so fast, taking pole and everything, and then not slow, not terribly slow, but slow enough that Hamilton was able to sort of pit later. Verstappen pits earlier. There's a whole bunch of things going through my head right now, so I'll just speak them out. I feel like Hamilton radioed into the pits, and they were like, how are the tyres? And he was like, oh, the front right, it's gone. And I feel like that might have been a bluff, like almost like a planned thing to sort of say to Verstappen, my tyres are gone, I'm going to pit soon. You had better pit, otherwise I'll undercut you, you know? So then Red Bull, assuming that that's true.
Obliged.
Red Bull pulls the trigger, they pit, and then to avoid getting undercut by Verstappen, Bottas pits. Then all of a sudden they're talking to Hamilton going, can you stretch? Or he's telling the team, I can stretch. Don't stop me. I can stretch it. This is, I believe, all planned. The other thing that's worth pointing out is that from the Mercedes point of view, yeah, they were looking at a 1-3 and they're going, how do we turn it into a 1-2? Let Hamilton stretch the first stint. Then he can pit and he'll either be behind them, but on fresher tires, or even maybe ahead of them if he can go real fast. And of course, yeah, that virtual safety car comes up just the perfect time and everyone's going slow and he gets a nice cheap pit stop and he gets to go into the front. I mean, if you're Valtteri Bottas, you must be thinking, what the hell? What the hell?
Yeah, who did I offend? Which god did I offend?
Yes, watching the race, I think it seemed a little bit more like, well, Hamilton was just better. He just outdrove you, man. He had clear air and he drove so fast, put in all those laps, and he earned the right to this win. But then learning later that Bottas had debris. He had the debris, he had the floor damage, he had the combination debris and floor damage. So I feel really bad for him. I feel like he didn't deserve that. I feel like he was really hard done by. Yes, the team turned a 1-3 into a 1-2, but on the other hand, Hamilton was the one that didn't take pole. Hamilton was the one that got a bad start, so it was his fault that he was third. So that's yeah. My opinion keeps shifting, not in huge ways, just in subtle ways. But this is what you tune into a podcast for.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the fact that Verstappen's car essentially, his wheel just kind of blew up on him, right? Was it really going to be a 1-2 until that moment? You know, Verstappen had just got past Bottas. Bottas was obviously suffering. It's a sad set of affairs as well that, even with damage and something that's impacting your laps at 0.7 seconds, at each one, Bottas was still pretty quick. You know, like that it was, Mercedes are that good that it's like,
I mean, I'm not even saying like Bottas deserved to hang on to P2, but you know, by all rights, he should have, you know,
been on the podium.
I mean, he made a mistake. So, I mean, that's how Verstappen got past him in the first place. It's just more to say, do you feel sorry for Bottas or not for losing out, quote unquote, on this win? Because I don't
think Bottas can really do anything else. You know, he's a great servant of the team.
Yeah, sure.
He is trying his best to think about strategy while he's in the car. You know, he's challenging where he thinks it's polite and makes sense. He's doing everything on Saturday, right? And everything in preparation. You know, this is the shortened race format. So we only had 1.5 hour long practice session. Was that it? On Saturday. Nobody really knew what the tires were going to do, which is why we saw some interesting tire problems during the race or tire questions. So people didn't quite know what to do qualifying as well, especially in the top 10, because, you know, that was going to define their tires for the start of the race, which is good for us as fans because we see a lot of change up in those first few laps. But yeah, Bottas, I mean, what can he do? He's taking poles against probably the best driver of his generation of my lifetime. So you can't get much more out of him than that. And it's not his fault when stuff like this goes wrong. So, you know, it takes his best often to finish second, let alone when he's hit by bad luck. And he has to kind of fight that the whole way through. So yeah, I feel sorry for Bottas.
Cool.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I think that if you're part of #TeamLH, you'd be like, Hamilton was always going to beat you, man. No, even if he's running third, he'll still find a way to beat you. He just finds a way because he's #blessed. I just feel like if things hadn't gone so well for Bottas in the first 2 laps, he wouldn't have got that debris. He probably would have just romped home to win. I know once you start saying if this, if that gets into pretty murky waters, but I just think it wouldn't have been anywhere near as clear cut as it ended up being anyway. So that's that, dude. Anything to say about Verstappen crashing out? Probably not. Other than that sort of brings out the safety car, the late one. So that's kind of when the rest of the race gets interesting, I suppose, because a whole bunch of stuff happens. The first thing that happens is obviously Bottas and Hamilton have been put on hard tires to get through to the end of the race, but then they're just like, no, we're going to stop for soft tires, because hey, we've got no one within a minute of us, so why not do that? Have a bit of fun and try and set the fastest lap as well. But everything else kicks off behind. So you've got basically, there's a whole heap of stories in every driver. There's a story about them. There's Perez, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Albon was back there. You could take your pick of where you want to start. Maybe Perez overtaking Albon, making it look easy. Albon was on the slower tires and Perez was on fresh, soft tires. We'll get to it in a second whether he should have even pitted for that or not. But Perez just screams past Albon all by himself and completely with no one anywhere near him, causing this just spins. And I think we both tweeted at the same time.
Yeah,
same thing.
I almost deleted mine.
Albon. Well, you should have just deleted mine. Pretty much that's Perez overtaking himself into that seat, surely.
Yeah, it was amazing because on first blush, it was like, who's hit Albon? Something bad's gone wrong there. Like, oh, gee whiz.
I think the team told them that.
There. Yeah, someone's hit you. And then you look at the replay, it's like, how did you manage to spin that?
Boy, that's real Patel effort.
Hitting anyone. Like, that's amazing that you pulled off a little pirouette right there, without taking anybody out and keeping it basically on the track, it seems, and all this kind of stuff. What's happened here? Like, the Albon of last year wouldn't have seemingly done that. The Albon of the first couple of races wouldn't have done this. It's almost like there's too many things going on for Albon, and he's just trying too hard. He's maybe overdriving a bit. And he's not relaxed, which is what we saw with Gasly when he came into the Red Bull team as well, right? He overdrove. You get a bit of bad luck. So that takes away, and you're looking at every single opportunity to impress at Red Bull because you know that you're the number 2 driver at Red Bull. And there's a target on your back, not just from the guys in AlphaTauri, but Helmut Marko's looking for ways to be like, well, if you're not good, you're out. So
I'm sure the team would have probably been on the radio as well to say, just so you know, you're on slow tires and Perez is behind you on pretty fast tires, and he's been pretty fast this whole race. It was a track that it was difficult to overtake at, but having said that, Perez just lined it all up perfectly and was just on the right tires to make it work. So in a race where it was not easy to overtake, I'm sure the team would have been telling him, defend as hard as you can. And then he just sails right past it. I'm sure his heart was just like, oh, fuck, I fucked that up.
Yeah. So what does this mean for Albon, though? Because he's not going to go down to AlphaTauri, right?
No.
They're going to promote someone from myriad places into that role. Would anybody touch? Like, what are the other seats available? You know, he's Perez at Red Bull, some young driver with cream of some young guy into the AlphaTauri alongside Pierre Gasly. You know, Haas aren't going to pick him up. Like, what are the other? There's no other seats, right?
Yeah, no. Would he take a reserve driver role? But where? And then, you know, where? I don't know what he wants to do. I'm sure he could go to lots of places, like the WEC or the World Endurance, or
Formula E.
Where else could he go? I mean, there's Formula E. Those are the sort of the typical ones we always keep trotting out. But
sometimes there's Indy.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, but I don't know if it tends to be the more experienced drivers tend to go into Indy. Although I say that, and I'm sure that who was that British driver who Max Chilton, I think, races in Indy.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know how good you need to be. Probably pretty good, right? Zach, don't be such a dickhead. Like, you have to be really, really, really good to be an IndyCar driver. That's not, no. And if you like Indy, terrific. You know, yes, of course, Max Chilton is a very good driver. He drives in great. But my point is that, could Albon get a reserve drive?
Dude.
Yeah. Maybe, Albon is looking at a reserve drive at Williams or McLaren or something like that.
Who knows?
You know, stay at home. But it's poor kid.
He'll just be another one of those. Like, you know, what does Stoffel Vandoorne do? What did Pascal Wehrlein do? Like, these drivers, they come and go, and then we forget all about them until they pop up in a Superquiz later. What about the decision?
Haven't even given Alexander Albon a really fun name. At least Stoffel Vandoorne got like Stoff the Doff and these kinds of things. Like, what's Albon's fun? We're going to have to do that before the end of the season. We'll give him a nice nickname. Send him off nicely.
There's a bit of merriment for me in the early days when I was suggesting, you know, pretending to confuse him with David Albon, who was from, you know, Blur and Gorillas and stuff. But that faded quickly because, boy, that was dumb. I'm not smart. I'm not a smart person. I want to get to the actual pitting, the actual racing point pitting variance.
Yeah, why was he on softs?
They offered this kind of explanation like, you know, we set up the car to conserve the tires and it meant switching them on and getting them up to heat was going to take forever, Mo. So, we didn't want to sit behind a safety car in hard tires and didn't want to do that. So instead we decided to pit him and lose 4 places. It's like 3 places. But like, dude, you just don't do that. And obviously Daniel Ricciardo was a great example of why you don't do that. So a strange one. They offered, I don't think they offered like a sound counter narrative to why they pitted him. They just sort of said, well, here's what we were thinking. And it's like, well, yeah, but even in the moment you should have thought, wait, that's wrong. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. There was and Perez hasn't held back because he knows he's not going to be there. So he's just like, seemed dumb to me. Like, can't wait to hear their explanation.
Why did you throw away the podium? Why did you do that?
Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's probably sitting back being like, what a gift.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely,
so nice.
It was a gift. Like, I mean, if you look at Ricciardo's race, obviously he finishes P3, but that doesn't really tell the story because Gasly would have been right there with him, most of the race. He had to retire. And then, Perez just pits in front of him like, okay, open goal, I suppose. Verstappen, exactly. There was another driver. Fuck. No, he's gone. Anyway, he inherited a couple of positions. Like if he'd finished in P6, he would have gone like, yeah, that's about right. But he's on the podium all of a sudden. Well, hey, sure he's off.
Yeah. No, yeah. Oh, God.
Well, Formula One goes that way sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And, Ricciardo has throughout his career. That's how he's essentially got his first win, right? Was just, you got to be there, pick up the scraps, stay involved. This is why I think he always gets pissed off when he, gets a DNF, because it's like, wow, God, if I could just get to the end of the race, I know that there would be points for me. Get that man in a good car. Mercedes-Benz McLaren, here we go.
That's true.
But yeah.
So yeah, hopefully there's a couple of other good things around the safety car. So one is George Russell, who was just cruising around in He was in P10. Kimi Räikkönen was in P11. There's a really good onboard with Kimi Räikkönen where he's just cruising around behind the safety car, warming up his tires. He knows what to do. Just leave him alone. But the team is on the radio to him to say, doing a great job, Kimi. You're in P11. And then right in front of him, you can see George Russell just sort of do that left turn into the wall. And he's like, Williams is in the wall. And they're like, very good. P10. It's pretty funny.
So chill.
But George Russell, gets out of the car, sits there and has his, what the commentators called the Mika Häkkinen moment, which I resent. That's not cool. Don't be dissing my man, my second favorite Finn. And then a huge outpouring of emotion and sympathy for George Russell. Like, oh, you don't deserve this. Don't be so hard on yourself. Someone pointed out an interesting comparison, and I want to get your reading on this. Why is it when Grosjean does this, he is a figure of derision and comedy, but when Russell does it, everyone's like, oh man, my heart goes out to you. You're so nice. Why did this have to happen to you? Don't be hard on yourself, buddy. Why is there a difference there?
I think you can break maybe the crowds up into three, right? Like I think that the Sky commentary is British, and they were all, and they don't want to punish someone for a mistake like that. Another British, young driver. I think from the drivers, his fellow drivers' perspective, they know how good he is, and they're probably a little bit like here's a guy who's got prodigious talent, should be in a better car. It's not his fault that Williams have kind of fallen back a little bit, and he should be in a better car next year, hopefully, but he's not. But sometime in the future. So they're just like, look, this is unfortunate, and it happens, and we've all been here, and we expect you to be here for a really long time. From a crowd's perspective, no one seems to dislike George Russell. I think that they're more like the drivers in this sense, that it's like, well, we just hope the best for this guy, and he seems really friendly and nice. You can't say a bad word about him because there's nothing really to pinpoint. And he doesn't, and he continually gets them out of Q1 in qualifying, and he continually is scrapping early in the race and all that kind of stuff. And he puts on a brave face, right? There was some reporting of him being like, well, got all the other guys that I grew up with who are worse than me are all at better teams than me. Why is that fair? I should be the one at Renault or at Red Bull or whatever it is. Like, why aren't I at McLaren instead of Lando Norris? He's a clown. Like, well, I could be doing a better job.
No talent jerk. What a plum. Absolute plonker.
What a plum.
And he's at such a great team, and he's literally got shit for brains.
What
a weird thing for George Russell to say. He deleted those tweets, by the way. Don't go looking for them.
He did. He left them in his drafts. He writes a lot of drafts.
That's what you do.
I think that there's a lot of love for George Russell, and but at the same time, I feel like don't necessarily pick Grosjean. Just pick if that was Gasly or Albon, people would have been like, see, basically over. That's it. Don't be so. What an idiot! What a crap racer! And everybody just thinks that George Russell's great. So do I. I think he's great. This is a crappy little mistake.
No, I think you pretty much nailed it. The two things that I would focus on are, number one, he hasn't really done much wrong. I mean, you could look at Grosjean's career and go like, oh yeah, remember when you kept crashing into cars on the first lap and they had to ban you for a race because you were so bad? There's that sort of thing. And then there's this idea of like, well, yes, you sort of sorted yourself out. Obviously, you've got some talent, but you're about where you belong in terms of the quality of the car and the quality of what you bring as a driver, as opposed to George Russell, who's like, okay, you've pretty much mopped the floor with all the teammates that you've had. Sure, maybe they weren't exactly Verstappen or Hamilton quality, but look, you can only race against the teammate that you're given, but you're also probably better than the car that you're in. So, I mean, I think those two things in combination are like, man, we all really want you to do as well as you possibly can. And to have not scored points so far is, I think, just the gorilla that's on his back, and he'll be really, really glad to get rid of it.
Yeah, and there'll be more opportunities. You know, maybe... Oh, will there?
Hopefully. Well, when Hamilton retires, he'll just slot straight into Mercedes, baby.
Oh, yeah, because Papa Wolf was going to get him right in there, of course.
It's Mercedes Daddy, please. Please.
Yeah.
Keep it formal. The only other note that I've got really is that Magnussen one, which you did sort of mention in your 30-second recap. So if I've forgotten any other big development that you want to talk about, that's cool. But otherwise, we can finish with Magnussen getting kicked in the head by the car.
I'm just not comfortable with, I like the double shoey on the podium. I'm not comfortable with the fact that it was Ricciardo's shoe, his sweat-filled shoe. Like, get Hamilton to use his own shoe if you want to do a shared shoey, because this is not coronavirus social. This is not a good message. You know, they're in separate bubbles. They're in the Formula One bubble, but they're in different team bubbles, I'm sure. Unless Ricciardo chose Hamilton as his support person or something.
Ha ha ha. Okay, well, Zach, maybe we should wrap up the race talk there, and maybe we should go and have a look at the Fantasy League.
Yes.
Let's see.
For fantasy focus.
Fantasy focus. I remember to do that. Okay, well, we should have a look at who did well in the league and who did well in the race. Do you want to do the league?
I got the league up right here,
Fantastic.
starting with Grosjean's in. Wow, I sound like a dog. Grosjean's in third, George Digby-Smith. Holding position there. Ipithys from Ipithys Racing also holding position in second. And that means Romeo e Giulietta Vincitore race, I was going to say Vincitore Racing. No, it's Romeo e Giulietta Racing. It's Vincitore, 1,991 points. So close to that 2,000 mark. We'll hit it next race. Things are very close in second and third, but I reckon, yeah, Grosjean's probably looking a little bit behind and maybe not up the road a bit because Daniel Avocado and What a Harsehole, gee, they're close. They're close behind while they're coming. So it's all to play for.
Keep it on the black
probably
stuff.
Those podium positions. Yeah, it's keep it on the black stuff. Don't think about track limits. Don't get your times deleted.
Exactly.
That's what we want to go for.
That's what I was going to say. Very good. Well, I'll cover the league and the race and the implications thereabouts. The podium this week was the third team, Just Want to Beat My Bro by Emerson Susan O'Donnell. In position number 2, Golden Wheels by Heath O'Donnell. So I'm sorry you didn't live up to your team name. Your pro has beaten you this week, I'm afraid. But taking out the win this week with the maximum points, which is how this thing works, Medi GP by manager Emedi. And wanted to also call out the fourth team, Shakespeare's Spark Plugs, hard to say, by Carolyn O'Donnell. All four of these team names, they're unfamiliar ones to us. They're sort of, if they walk past you in the street, you wouldn't even notice. They're just unassuming teams. But that's because they've all done incredibly well this race and have all jumped up in the league. I can see the four teams have jumped a collective total of 30 positions. So they've all jumped a pretty substantial way up the ladder in the league, which I did not. I went down one spot to be in 40th overall with my unchanged strategy, and I can't change it anymore. I'll get more penalties. It's just not paying off. It's just not working for me. I'm spinning my wheels, basically.
Yeah, my unchanged strategy is going okay. I've dropped a position. I think I'm going to make some changes. I think Lance Stroll might need some adjustment. I guarantee he'll get a podium now. As soon as I take him out, he'll be like, oh my God, I don't even know how this happened. Everybody crashed except me.
Well, he probably gave them all COVID. That's how he did so well. He's a super spreader.
Didn't tell anyone. And a not so super racer.
No. Boy, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Well, we looked at the Fantasy League. Maybe we should jump into a super quiz. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
We will accept a couple of questions. Should one only win one? Would one want to have won that one in round one?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so it's the super quiz. You're about to listen to a whole bunch of me talking, and that's because my computer decided to flip out while we were recording this, and all you're going to get is me reading through the quiz. That's because on the other side of the world, Zach is sitting there recording his side of what happened. On my side of the world, I was here chatting away, running through all the quiz questions without a care in the world, laughing and just feeling good about myself. And then at the end of this, I looked down and my computer had stopped recording for reasons that are yet unknown. But long story short, one of the problems that we found in the past from when I've done it is we can re-record a show. We can try and do what we can to put the show back together. But the problem really is when there's a super quiz, because you kind of already done it. It's a bit hard to redo a super quiz because the other person already knows the answers. So what's the point? But because we've got Zach responding in real time with his answers, we've still got that. I can still read through the questions and we get something resembling some kind of super quiz. This might be a good one for you guys to play along with at home, because all you're going to hear is me read the question and then you're going to hear Zach's answer, and it's going to be pretty dry, but we'll stumble through and we'll do our best. The quiz I put together this week was called I Was There Too, which, apart from being an excellent old podcast that isn't around anymore, the idea of this one was, we all know that at this race, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, Mercedes wrapped up the 2020 Constructors' Championship, making it 7 in a row. No team has ever done that before. So what I thought I would do is go through the 6 previous years where they won a Constructors' Championship, look at the race where they wrapped it up, and then look at, besides the Mercedes drivers, look at the story of the podium, really, or the race. What was interesting about that race? What happened in that race? What was notable, as well as the fact that Mercedes wrapped up the Constructors, if you follow what I'm saying. So we're going to go through each of the previous 6 years. Don't need to do this year because that's what this whole episode has been about. So we go all the way back to 2014 and we're looking at the Russian Grand Prix, which is where Mercedes scored their first in this run of championships. Hamilton won. Rosberg came home in second. The question for Zach is, which other driver was on the podium that day who now drives a very fast car? What do you think, Zach? Pause for Zach's answer.
Oh, which other driver who now drives a very fast car? Was it Bottas?
The answer, yes, Valtteri Bottas. He was driving for Williams, and it was the first time that Lewis Hamilton or Mercedes had ever heard of Bottas, and then they decided to sign him just a couple of years later. Interesting. Skip forward to 2015. Mercedes scored their second championship. This was also at the Russian Grand Prix that year. Nico Rosberg retired. Hamilton took another victory at that race. Vettel's Ferrari was in P2, and this time an occasional podium snatcher rounded out the podium. The question for you, Zach, now is, who was that occasional podium snatcher?
Oh, occasional podium snatcher. Russian Grand Prix. Was it Daniel Ricciardo?
That's Chico Perez. So, from Force India, Chico Perez is the sneaky podium snatcher. Sneaky podium snatcher, yep. On that day, it was Sergio Perez. Then we jump forward to 2016 at the Japanese Grand Prix. Mercedes secured their third championship. Joining the 2 Mercedes drivers on the podium was Max Verstappen. He was in P2. The Mercedes drivers were in position 1 and position 3. The question for Zach is, which driver was in position 1 taking the win, and which driver was in position 3?
2016. I'm going to say Rosberg came first and Lewis Hamilton, the number 2 driver that season, came third.
2016 Japanese Grand Prix, Rosberg did win that one. He was having his, what I call his confidence year. Lewis Hamilton qualified in second, made a really bad start, only could recover to P3. That was also the race where Hamilton stormed out of a media conference, was not having a good one, really had the hump. And it was after that race result that Rosberg was in a position to follow Hamilton home. Hamilton could win all the races for the rest of the year. And Rosberg could just come in second and he would still win the championship. And that's pretty much exactly what he did. So moving on, 2017, it was the United States Grand Prix where Mercedes locked in their 4th championship. Hamilton and Vettel were 1 and 2. This was mostly a memorable race for the post-race penalty that was handed down.
Oh, yeah.
It handed Kimi Räikkönen P3, leading to a very awkward cool-down room where the driver that originally finished in 3rd was informed up close and personal and on live TV by the stewards that he had to leave and he was not going to be on the podium that day. The question for Zach is, what driver was that?
Oh, was it? No, I was going to say Carlos Sainz Jr., but no, he was given a podium at some point. Maybe last season. Max Verstappen?
Yes, incredibly super awkward for Max Verstappen, who got a penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, was sitting in the cool-down room thinking he was about to walk out and stand on the podium and get given a trophy, but The stewards came in and told him, very sorry, no podium for you. Memorable, I thought, moment. So, 2018 in Brazil, Mercedes scores a win and a P5, and that was just enough for them to clinch their 5th title in a row. Max Verstappen had the win in the bag until a previously lapped car tried to unlap themselves, and they made contact with Verstappen, which sent him and his hopes of winning into a spin. Everybody knows that Esteban Ocon was that driver, right? Everybody remembers that. Very memorable. Ocon, on that day, got an in-race penalty. The question for Zach is, after the post-race argy-bargy that those two got into, what was the post-race punishment for Verstappen?
3 Hail Marys, probably. It's that kind of penance, that kind of thing. Doesn't get dessert tonight, like a good boy. Doesn't get driving the second driver's dessert. Yeah, exactly. You don't get to eat Albon's dessert tonight, okay? It's fun. I like this Verstappen as the villain move recently. I think that's going to leave that for the rest of his career. What was his punishment? Was it just a fine? Was it like a 50,000 euro fine, something like that? I can't remember.
The post-race punishment for Verstappen was actually community service. He was given the FIA equivalent of community service. It was safety related. He had to go to the Formula 2 races and stand there and say, be safe, don't do bad things and stuff.
Back to school.
He just had to be a nice boy for a little while, basically. And then lastly this week, looking to last year's 2019 Japanese Grand Prix, Mercedes claimed title number 6 in a row with Bottas, Vettel and Hamilton on the podium. After a first lap tangle between Leclerc and Verstappen left Leclerc's car damaged, he was barreling it down the straight and one of his end plates eventually came off. It hit Lewis Hamilton's car, knocked something completely off it. And the question for Zach is, what was knocked off Lewis Hamilton's car?
Wing mirror?
Very good, yes. It was his mirror that was knocked off. And even though that was a whole, 90 degrees or something that he had no vision of really for the whole race, still good enough for him to come in third. Pretty good. Not too bad, this guy. He's a pretty handy driver. So that rounds out the I was there to quiz. It was a lot of me talking. Very sorry about that. It's not very often, though, that I get to say a lot and Zach only gets like 5 words in. So I guess I should relish the opportunity. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to throw it back to us now so that we can wrap up the show, because by now we've worked out that the recording didn't work and we're going to go back to normal recording to wrap up the show. So here we go. All right, Zach, it's been a meal of a show. It's all my and my computer's fault jointly. And we're going to try and bring it home strong. In this weird patchwork of a show with a final thought. So, Zach, throw me your final thought.
So, there's some concern amongst Formula One reporters that I was following along with that what were they going to eat? Because the restaurants are all closed because of curfew stuff, and they're going to be at the track for so long, and like, what are they going to eat those nights, and those kinds of things. And these are all reasonable concerns. Like, I'm not saying, like, there was a lot of Twitter responses from people who were like, but, oh God, I cut off my right arm. Even my left arm to beat Imola this weekend, just like, way to complain about that kind of stuff. And look, these are reasonable concerns. My thought, though, was you're all staying in Airbnbs and stuff, like from what I've seen on Instagram and otherwise. Just go to the supermarket before the race, buy some food. And when you come home, you're cooking on the stovetop. Just heat yourself up some beans, or buy some pasta and some pesto, and just like eat it. Like it's not hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not hard.
This is people in Italy that you're talking about.
These are reporters and otherwise. These are media people who were like, we get food at the track and free coffee and all that kind of stuff, and it's good. But like, what are we going to eat after our day is done? Wondering. We can't go out for all these great meals and stuff with all our mates.
Yeah. Do they even have pasta in Italy? Not sure.
I don't know. And look, I know it's difficult, but I found that a bit. It's like there was only one way to solve the problem, when really, if they just expanded their minds, they might have found that they could, in fact, go to a supermarket in a foreign country and buy some food and
swallow some concrete and toughen up. That's what you're trying to say. Yeah,
that's it. But I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, because it is complicated, and I don't like that everybody just tweeted and being like, you should consider yourself the luckiest person in the world. I'm sure they have to put up with that bullshit all the time. And I'm glad that these people share their experiences, because it gives us a bit of insight into their lives and the world of Formula One, because we can't be there. But yeah, man, cook yourself some food. It's not hard. Buy a sandwich.
reminds me a little bit of something that happened in Melbourne recently where, because we've been in lockdown and the lockdown was put in place by the Premier, this cafe that was doing takeaway coffees put a tip jar and it said, if you're a fan of the Premier, there's a $1 surcharge, so you have to put a coin in. And people were like, I mean, it was tongue in cheek, but someone was like, oh, how dare you do that, blah, blah, blah. And it blew up into a big thing. But someone was like, how could you do that? And they were like, look, I mean, we come in here and work. We're earning bugger all. It's stressful and we're not making much money. And people think that because they come in and spend $3 on a coffee that they have the right to tell us, boy, you must be so glad that you can still open and still work. Ooh, you're so lucky. And they were like, no, we're not lucky, actually. We're not. We've had to let go of a bunch of our staff. We have to come in and work and make, a small fraction of the usual revenue that we would normally make. It's not good. It's not a good thing. Just because you're, buying a coffee from me doesn't mean you get to tell me how to feel, So, I mean, there's that element, but I mean, I actually kind of do agree. The only thing I might say is that if I was in a foreign land and maybe I didn't have a car, didn't really speak the native language particularly well, or even know my way around the area, I might be concerned enough to tweet, like, what am I going to do for dinner? But, I mean, yeah, I would also just find a way. I mean, it's the same.
But if mum goes on holiday, how am I going to eat?
I know there's a bit of that too. When I was in the paddock, I mean, I'm not, it's not a humble brag or anything. I've only done it twice and I shouldn't have been there. But when I was in the paddock a few years ago and Valtteri Bottas won the race, the Finnish journalists, they just suddenly sprung, oh, I've got VBs right here. It's like, because Valtteri Bottas and VB is the beer that we have here. I was like, how did you get that? Nature just finds a way, Zach.
Yeah, I'm sure there was one way that they could have ordered, these journalists could have ordered pizza early and then heated it up in the microwave like a normal human being does the next day, but instead just do it a couple of hours later.
Perhaps.
And the funny thing is, hopefully none of the reporters and Formula One associated people listen to this show and be like, God, that Zach's a real right cunt, a real plum, as it was.
Absolutely, a plum. What a plum. There's absolutely no way that any F1 journalist of any note listens to this show. There's just no way.
Yeah,
it's just not possible.
I'm not calling you out individually, and I'm sure you did solve it. I'm sure you found a way to find some muesli bars.
I'm glad they did. Not every tweet is literal. You got to remember that. I mean, retweets do not equal endorsement either. So anyway, that kind of leads me a little bit into what was going to be my final thought, which is they would have only had to have done that twice because this race weekend was a 2-day race weekend. This was something that F1's sort of trying, even though we'd already had one earlier in the season. But they were like, can we even do a what would it look like? What are the implications that we aren't thinking of if we run a 2-day race? And in the bigger scheme of things, can we please squeeze in 20 or 30 more races onto the calendar if we do that? Some people saying yes, some people saying no, some people saying it makes no difference, some people saying, yeah, this is incredible. I just don't really know. I haven't heard anything post-race to be like, yeah, 2-day weekends. We're all about them. Bring them on. This is great. It has to be a little bit about it. That's, it's less fine-tuning that the cars and the drivers can do. It was a bit weird, I think, though, to do it at a completely unknown track that almost all of these drivers haven't driven at before. Like, I know Kimi has, but I mean, he's like 400 million years old. So
I think they said Lando Norris was 6 when Kimi.
Yeah, and Kimi was 5th in the race. That's pretty good. But I thought it might be more representative to do it at a track that we have actually gone to a whole bunch of times, so that we can get an idea of like, well, out of the 21 races that we're going to go to, 20 of them we've been to before. That's going to be typical for almost every single year. So why not do it? If you want to understand what the implications are going to be on a normal calendar, if we shrink them all to 2-day races, race events, then we need to kind of, it needs to be more representative.
Yeah. I think that Karen Chanduk maybe tweeted about this. So he was like, a mix is probably the right way to do it. If you want to have,
I think that kind of makes sense. 2
or 3 race weekends in a row, those should be ones that at tracks that we could be like, okay, well, maybe 2 of those are 2-day weekends and they're at tracks that we know really well. And that makes sense.
Back-to-back ones, it makes a lot of sense.
Where one could be a 2-day and one isn't, or otherwise. So, just need to be flexible with the calendar a bit more. We're going to have 45 races, in 2022, I think. So 16, I think of those are going to be in Italy. So yeah, maybe those could be even 1-day races, 1-day race weekends. Start early.
Why not have 2 races in a day? Why not?
Reverse the grid on one of those as well.
When Hamilton retires, it's like, boom, 3 races every single Saturday. And then, we're going to break these records again.
Why are we restricted to having one world championship in the year? Why not 2?
This is what I'm talking about. Why not have a summer and a winter championship?
Along with the Olympics every 4 years.
The thing that I was thinking with Hamilton breaking the record, obviously, right, someone's going to come along after him and they'll break his record. The depressing thing is, if he wins 120 races, the driver that's going to break that record probably hasn't even started yet. So we have a huge... It'll happen. The record will be broken. For sure it will. They said that Schumacher's would never be broken, and yet here we are. It'll happen. It'll get broken. But the depressing thing is that we're going to have to sit through someone winning within their career 150 races or something. So something's got to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it was probably going to be this generation before they changed the rules on you have to be 18 to get a super license, right? Or you have to be 18 to drive in Formula One. You know, it was going to be, they're going to pluck some guy from Formula 4 who's 13 and stick him in the AlphaTauri.
So you mean Red Bull? Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, that's a good point. Oh, God, I don't want that level of dominance.
I don't either. And that's the only ray of hope is if they actually change tact and they're like, okay, we're actually going to fundamentally change what Formula One is. Now everyone gets exactly the same car. You just paint it what color you want and then the best driver wins. See you later. Off you go. That would just mix things up so much. And Fernando Alonso will be around for another 10 years if that's the case.
Yeah, that's almost another kind of problem, isn't it? You put salary caps in all that kind of stuff, and then you just end up with drivers who will be around forever.
Well, yeah.
The NFL quarterback problem. Well,
anyway, Zach.
Final thought. Yeah,
thanks. We've got a week off before the next race, so we'll try and squeeze in a shakedown, and then we'll be back for, I think it's Turkey for the last of the... Is Turkey in Europe? It's the last of that part of the world for races.
In Europe, not in the EU. Is how it goes.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
But a part of NATO.
Very good. We'll be back for Turkey to talk all about that, and hopefully some cool stuff happens. We might even know where all these other drivers are bouncing around to between then and now. Zach, until I talk to you next, please stay safe and look after yourself. And I was nearly going to say enjoy lockdown. Please take care of yourself.
Looking forward to making lots of banana bread.
Exactly. Fantastic. You should try growing bananas. You'll have time.
Oh, yeah. That's next. That's next on the list.
On the bucket list. All right. Well, until the next episode, whatever that may be that you listen to, my name's been Rodney.
My name's been Zach.
Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.